How you doing? It is Curd and Long, Steve Sparky Fifer, along with my guy Ryan Horvat from BetMGM tonight, weeknights, Monday through Friday. Him, Nick Ashu, and Trista Crick are the BetQL Radio Network. Follow Ryan Horvat on Twitter at Ryan Horvat. You can follow me at Sparky Radio. Check out the interviews that I do, namely weekly interviews with Tim Dillard, talking Brewers baseball, the former Brewers pitcher and Bally Sport, Wisconsin baseball analyst as well. At 1250 amthefan.com. In fact, I'm actually going to record with Tim Dillard. He's in Canada as the Brewers are playing the Blue Jays here after we're done doing this. And we are streaming this live right now. If you're lucky enough to catch us on Twitter at 1250 AM The Fan or at Sparky Radio, or you can also catch us live right now on the Odyssey Sports YouTube page, as well as we stream Curd and Long live. Now, why are we doing it live versus being recorded? Because I figure like if we had, a radio show right now, this would be the topic du jour that everybody is talking about. I heard Jim Rome on CBS Sports Radio on 1250 AM The Fan led his show with Aaron Rodgers comments in the Athletic piece done by Matt Schneidman. Very well done in that, and some nuggets to kind of go over. So we're going to go over that. So let's start here. In the beginning of this piece, he talks about the fact that the Packers knew Rodgers wouldn't be happy about the selection and protect the relationship between him and head coach Matt LaFleur. They told him the decision to draft Love was strictly the GM's. Rodgers then has a quote after that. I'm not going to read every word of every piece of this article, but Rodgers pretty much said, yeah, his friends are like, dude, he looked pretty happy to me when they made that Jordan Love pick. And Rodgers is like, hey, they all signed off on it. If they took him, they all clearly signed off on it, regardless of what they're telling Rodgers at the end of the day. You and I have had this conversation, Horvat, about how he views LaFleur, how much LaFleur had say in how this whole thing played out. And there's not a lot in this piece about him and LaFleur's relationship. It's the majority about it is him and Goody's relationship. And then he throws Russ Ball some love as well in this piece. Does Rodgers, really appreciative of Russ Ball. But with Matt LaFleur, not a lot said. I mean, I get why you tell Rodgers, LaFleur really wanted you. But again, I'm with Rodgers' friends here. We all watched it. He was getting like a little schoolgirl. He was all excited that they got his guy Jordan Love that night. We were all watching on TV because remember, that was COVID. So everybody was like in their house or wherever the case may be. Yeah. And so you saw it happen with him on video when the whole thing went down. I was stunned. Gary was yelling, no. Gary Ellerson on the air. He was just madder than all get out when they made that pick. So do you believe now, after all this, that LaFleur was probably on board with this decision?
I don't want people coming after me. No, I don't think so. I mean, what do you believe? Because didn't I see a report?
Yes, he absolutely was. There's no question. Listen,
I saw a report. Hold on. Hear me out. I saw a report literally 2 days ago on Twitter, all over social media, that Matt LaFleur and Jordan Love's relationship, and I quote, is less than ideal. Like next to NFL. I don't know what the hell the report was. That was the report.
Oh, I didn't see that.
I know that LaFleur is fully sold on Jordan Love. I think Goot's ready for Jordan Love, and he was tired of Rodgers' crap last season. I don't know what to believe. Yeah, on draft night, it looked like LaFleur was pretty happy. He had a smile on his face. But I don't know, man. Now there's a lot of pressure on Matt LaFleur.
So this is the deal, right?
I don't know if he's fully sold on Jordan Love. I don't know.
So here we go. So we're on video here, Odyssey Sports YouTube page, and if you're watching us live stream, you can see the video. If Matt LaFleur wasn't necessarily on board with the Jordan Love pick and the camera's on Matt LaFleur, Jordan Love pick is made, he's like, okay, yep, good pick. If Matt LaFleur is on board with the Jordan Love pick, you get what you got. Yay! That's what it was. I mean, those are two totally different reads. If somebody's kind of like, okay, my boss said that, so I'll kind of nod my head and be like, okay, that's a good pick. Versus,
hold on.
That's exactly what he was, man.
No, LaFleur was still new on the job. He was new to the job, right? He'd only been there for a year. He can't mope. It's like he's a professional. It's like at the end of the day, you and I, we do the same job. So even if we're having a crappy day or maybe we don't want to talk about a certain topic, sure, like stupid baseball or the NBA Finals or Nick Nurse coaching the Philadelphia 76ers. I don't sit there and mope, but I work with people that do. And that's not being a professional, damn it. So Matt LaFleur was being a professional. He can't just rip his general manager 1 year. He had just got destroyed in the NFC title game and gave up 300 yards on the ground. So here's what I'm saying. I bet you, like, during the evaluation process, obviously because, like, Matt LaFleur calls his own plays, right? He was a play caller. He was an offensive coordinator before he became the head coach. So I'm sure there was conversations, about Jordan Love. I'm sure they evaluated Jordan Love. I don't know if he wanted to move up in the first round for Jordan Love that year, but who knows? I mean, what do I know? Like you said, he looked happy, but even if he didn't agree with the pick, I don't think he would like look pissy on the screen or anything like that because he's a professional.
Right. No doubt about it. In this piece, Schneidman writes the difference between Favre and Rodgers at the end. Schneidman writes 2 of Favre's campaigns with Rodgers on the bench were subpar, while Rodgers won MVPs with Love looking on into the last 3 seasons. Okay, fine. But in fairness to Brett, maybe his best year, well, it was definitely his best year to that point since probably back in the Holmgren years, was that last year going to the NFC Championship game. He was the best version of Brett that we had seen prior to then him landing in Minnesota a couple of years later, and he put on a show that year too. So those 2 years were probably the best years of not making dumb throws, well, except in the playoffs, but during the regular season, not making the dumb throws and really playing under control. And then you have the press conference, the retirement, and all that other stuff, and they wanted to come back. But Favre, his last year in Green Bay was a really good year outside of how the conference championship game ended when he looked, brittle and old. But he had a really good season, Ryan. It wasn't like they were coming off of a season like Rodgers just had, where his team was under 500. They missed the playoffs. To me, that's easier to move on when your team's not that good versus going a game away from going to the Super Bowl with Brett.
They were favorites in that game. They should have went to the Super Bowl, but like you said, Favre looked so old and cold, and
how many field goals did that Giants kicker miss in that game? Like 3, something like that.
I mean, it was a tremendous amount. I'll never forget. I watch games at home, man. I hate being out in public. And my mom talked me into going to Semino's Pizzeria in Joliet, Illinois.
All right.
And everybody there, is obviously a Bears fan, so they're rooting for the Giants. And I'm starting fights with people, and I'm 14
shocked.
years old at the time. And that was one of the worst nights of my life. That and obviously that and the Seattle NFC title game. Those were the 2 worst days as a Packer. I think, although there have been some tough ones, obviously. But yeah, man, that was a fun year, though, because we didn't really have high expectations, even though, the year before they looked pretty good to close out the season. And then Brett had an MVP-type season. He was on the cover of Madden. That was one of my favorite years of Favre, actually, until, of course, the cold weather Lambeau game against the Giants, which I still can't believe that the Giants win that game and then go on and beat the Patriots. But that was a crazy year. That was a fun year of football. Yeah, Favre was really good those couple of years. I mean, it helped. I feel like he was rejuvenated by some of the younger guys. Remember, he fell in love with Greg Jennings that year.
Yeah, he did. Okay, so further in this piece, this is this part of the article is what really blew up and is making all the headlines. But there's another piece in this article I want to talk about besides this main one that we'll get into right now, which is in the 2021 offseason, Dunn, Rodgers' agent, according to a source, called Packers president Mark Murphy with a request: fire Gutekunst or trade Rodgers. Murphy did neither. Months later, news broke that Rodgers wanted out of Green Bay, but the Packers held firm. Of course, when Rodgers was asked about this, he didn't want to talk about it. Talk to my agent. I'm not talking about that. He talked about everything else in the piece. He just didn't want to talk about that necessarily at the end of the day. I don't know whose call that was. I don't know if that was Rodgers' call, that he said, get rid of him or I'm not coming back. You can tell him that. Or if his agent's like, I got it, I'll take care of it, don't worry about it. And then he went rogue and kind of did his own thing and Rodgers wasn't involved. But in this piece, he talks about him. He don't like Goody. They're not boys. They're not friends. They're not going to go hang out and have beers together, whatever else. You don't get along with everybody you work with in life. And that's part of the deal. But if he did give the command to his agent to call Murphy and be like, tell him, get rid of Goody and I'm good. And if he doesn't, then trade me. If he issued that command to have his agent call Murphy and tell him that, you don't come back from that because Murphy's going to tell Gutekunst that the call happened as soon as he gets off the phone. Brian, can you come see me for a second? Right? Brian comes in. He's like, just got off the phone with Rodgers' agent. They've done. And they want you gone or he wants to be traded. He's going to tell Goody, guaranteed. And then Rodgers is going to supposedly show back up in the building, and these two are going to have a relationship going forward after that. Goody's not going to forget about that. That's not just going to be water under the bridge. I mean, if there was any chance of that relationship working at any point, he just lit the bridge on fire and said, "To hell with it. I'm out. I don't want this relationship. I don't want to be a part of this dude. I want out if you're not going to get rid of him." That, to me, of this was one of the two more shocking things that kind of made me shake my head in this piece by Matt Schneidman of The Athletic.
Yeah. I mean, well, we'd heard that, though. Like, I didn't really learn anything new.
But there was a lot of denying of that whole thing back when that came out. Oh, no. I didn't do that. And now it comes up, and now he says, well, I'll talk to my agent. Okay.
I think both guys, like, let's be honest, just have really big egos, both Brian and Aaron, right? I think they were both sick of each other. I don't think the relationship ever was very good. And then the Davante stuff, I think that just, like, set Rodgers over the edge because I don't care what Rodgers says, what he believes. Like, he only was coming back because he thought Davante was coming back. Whether that was they were going to sign him to a deal.
Last stand stuff, remember that?
Tag. Rodgers knew Davante wasn't going to play on the franchise tag, man. Guys aren't going to play on the franchise tag. Not Davante Adams, not the best wide receiver in the league. Also, I feel like the Christian Kirk deal was actually after the Davante stuff.
We'll get to that later.
But what I'm saying is, though, like, this started a long time ago, though. This was the Jordy Nelson. Remember, they wanted him to take a pay cut, and they really lowballed Jordy.
Yep.
He's talked about all this stuff, man. Clay Matthews just gets a phone call. You know, it's just, I think Rodgers, wants his buddies, obviously, on the team and taken care of. Goot is like, that's not how the NFL works, man. Like, that's not how the Green Bay Packers work. Like Brian Bulaga, TJ Lang, you get rid of guys 2 years early, maybe, or a year early, rather than give them another contract and regret it. So, like, I don't really hate what Goot's doing. He's trying to run his team his way. This isn't Ted's Packers. It's Goot's time. He wants to get younger. He doesn't want a bunch of old guys. I get it. But Rodgers wants his veterans. And so I just think that relationship, it was like a bad marriage. It was just time for them to part ways, man.
On a side note, you brought up TJ Lang. Very disappointed to see he's off Twitter. Very, very disappointed. I enjoy TJ Lang on Twitter, and I don't know why he got rid of his Twitter account, but I saw he got promoted to be on a show on The Ticket in Detroit today, and there's no Twitter handle. I'm like, he's on Twitter. So I look, gone. No longer on Twitter. So I don't know what happened, but TJ Lang, I miss you on Twitter. Okay, so let's further this conversation and move forward. So now we get to Rodgers talking about Russ Ball. And after Rodgers comes back, they all have this big conversation about how we're going to be more visible. There's going to be more conversation and so forth. And Rodgers pretty much points out in this article that really the only one that was more visible and tried to do things differently was Russ Ball. And Russ Ball is the guy that's not talked a lot about unless you're talking about contracts and negotiations and that type of stuff. But when this whole thing was formed, Russ Ball reports to Mark Murphy, Brian Gutekunst, Mark Murphy, Matt LaFleur, Mark Murphy. So they all only have one boss, and that is Mark Murphy at the end of the day. None of those three report to each other. They all report to the same guy. It's interesting that Russ Ball, of all people, is the one down there trying to make good. And Goody, not as much. Now, again, if Rodgers doesn't like him, obviously he's not going to give him the credit that he deserves one way or the other, even if he was trying. So we also have to understand from that perspective. But at least somebody, I guess, kind of put together the olive branch going forward and try to be more involved with the players and how it goes. You ever see the movie Moneyball?
Yeah.
You ever see that movie? Billy Beane and the Athletics?
Yeah.
You remember in that movie, he's the general manager of that team. And he refused to have relationships with any of his players because it made it easier for him to get rid of and release guys and trade guys and fire guys and cut guys or whatever. And he didn't want to have relationships with any of his guys. And then the assistant is on the plane with David Justice. And Justice is like, dude, what's the deal with raising the prices on the soda machine? What are charging us for soda? Da 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 da. He's like, why doesn't he ever fly on the team plane with us or whatever else?
Yeah.
And then you obviously figured out, does that make it easier for him to cut us? And I wonder if there's some of that with Goody, where he doesn't want to have a relationship with these guys at all. He wants to keep what he's doing separate from what his decision-making process is with guys on this roster. Is that good or is that bad? I don't know, but maybe that's the philosophy.
Yeah, it's kind of what I love and hate about the guy. Again, because like we're Packer fans, you know, and we root for a team in a small market, and we fall in love with guys like Jordy Nelson and Clay Matthews. And, you know, we're all pissed about only one Super Bowl ring. For some of these guys, no Super Bowl rings. You know, kind of wanted to win one for Julius Peppers, although it is maybe his fault that they didn't. Charles,
we'll move on.
But what I'm saying is, like, we fall in love with these guys, and then Goot makes the decision to cut them or lowball them or get rid of them. Like, I'm still mad about Devontae Adams. But at the end of the day, man, it was probably the right decision. I mean, I don't know, because I think last year they probably still win 11, 12 games if Devontae's back, and probably the relationships and the chemistry in the locker room are still good. But, like, you know, he's got to make these cutthroat decisions, and that's where he's different than, you know, a lot of these general managers. And I guess that is a good way to go about it, because then it's, you know, you don't become attached to these guys like we do. So cutting a Jordy Nelson, or first saying, hey, we'll give you $1 million, you got to take a $12 million pay cut. That's not that tough, because you don't develop a relationship with this guy and you realize it's a business. Hey man, this isn't personal. You're 32 years old and we could pay $12 million less for this 23, 24-year-old with the speed in the hands who could actually get open and create separation. So I get what Goot's doing. I don't love it as a fan, but I understand it, you know, as a businessman or as just a football fan. It just sucks when it's like Aaron Rodgers is gone and Jordy Nelson's gone and Clay Matthews is gone, all these guys, and it's time for a rebuild. And you're like, wait, only 2 Super Bowl rings the last, you know, 20 plus years with Favre and Rodgers? That sucks. And hopefully Jordan Love wins 12 games and the Packers win 12 games this season and next season, and they continue to dominate the NFC North the way that Favre and Rodgers did. I think a lot of people are just like, you know, sold that that's going to be the case. And I don't know yet. I need to see Jordan Love play an entire season, or at least like 3 full games before I know if he's going to be any good. So it just sucks kind of to go into this like rebuild season or be plus 400 to win the NFC North or have a win total at 7.5 and think, man, we could be the Bears for the next 10 years. But like, that's the difference, is like Brian Gutekunst making these decisions, bringing in the right guys, hopefully evaluating the right talent in the draft. Then you don't become the Bears or the Lions, because you just make the decision, hey, Rodgers is old. I know you guys love him. We'll bring him back and put him in the Packer Hall of Fame, but he's got to go, because in the locker room right now, let's be honest, he's a cancer. That sounds like a disaster. I can't defend Rodgers. Like last year, man, like he didn't seem interested at all. And I know I know obviously you lose your best friend on the team or your best wide receiver, Devontae Adams, but he didn't seem like he was fully in for the first time ever. I've never said that about Aaron Rodgers. He just didn't seem committed last year. So it was time to move on. And I think both guys, like, I mean, Rodgers, I think they're both full of crap. I don't think either of them wants to look like the bad guy. I just think this relationship was terrible. It was time to part ways.
I give credit to Matt Schneidman for getting Rodgers and getting these quotes. Matt Schneidman of The Athletic, great piece on Aaron Rodgers. Like I said, I'm not going to read all of this because that's a disservice to Matt Schneidman, because obviously they want you to buy the Athletic subscription and go read all of these guys' great work at The Athletic. But I'm going to move on further in the article. And if you're getting Kurt and Long, you download it. We record 3 days a week, normally Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, normally up and ready to go by 5 p.m. each day Central Time. You can download it on your Odyssey app or wherever you download your favorite podcasts. And of course, Odyssey Sports page from time to time. We'll throw some videos up there right now, live streaming at our Odyssey Sports page, Kurt and Long. All right, now we get further in the article. It starts talking about Devontae Adams, the contract. And apparently, according to the story, they only offered 18. DeAndre Hopkins, who, by the way, is a free agent, was set to make $27 million, and Adams wanted to be making more than him. Now, NFL executives around the league were furious about that DeAndre Hopkins deal and thought that he was way overpaid, and that was screwing up the standard for wide receivers in the league, and nobody else wanted to go down that path of paying that much money for a wide receiver. And I saw somebody on Twitter get all upset about this and say, wow, it's negotiating. Like, quit being a egomaniac, and it's just part of the negotiating process. But you have to understand something. When you negotiate a contract, okay, and you're the person negotiating the contract, yes, you want to get the best deal you can for you and your company, for certain, no question. And that's what the Packers want to do. But if he's asking for 28 and your initial offer is 10 million less, that's not even remotely close. At that point, you might as well have just said, we're going to play the year out and see where we go, Davante. Why bother? Because that was an insult. And once you insulted him, there was no coming back. They would have been better off saying, let's talk about it at the end of the year. And let's see where Aaron Rodgers is and what we're doing with him. And then we'll have this conversation at the end of the year once I know kind of what this salary cap structure is going to look like. I want to get to you, but I want to get Aaron done too. We'll get you both done together to make sure you're both here for the long term. That's how this should have went. But instead you insult him. I go back to Russ Ball, who Aaron Rodgers was praising. Was that his call to insult him with $18 million? Was it Gutekunst's call to insult him? Was it who made the decision to insult him essentially at $10 million less than what he wanted? Now, from their perspective, they could be like, we weren't insulting him. Look at the numbers, Sparky. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, fine. But you knew what he wanted. $10 million less. It's going to piss him off. You knew what you were about to do, and you did it anyhow. And then we're surprised that he wanted to be traded at the end of the year. How could you possibly be shocked that that's how this whole thing played out? That was just, in my opinion, poor negotiating. Horrible. They would have better off not even making an offer and waiting till the end of the year to have the conversation.
And this is what I'm saying, though, Sparky, is like, this is where conversation should have been had like, hey, this is going to be the real last dance. Or Rodgers, you want to come back, you have to take this amount of money because Davante is going to wants $10 million more dollars. Like all of this, though, should have been, and this is where, obviously, like the Goot and the Rodgers stuff and having no communication, this is where this comes into play. And Davante having a bad relationship with Goot because he felt lowballed, or Russ Ball or whoever else, is none of them could just get together in a room like human beings and say, hey, we want to win one more Super Bowl. So, but for Davante, it isn't about winning a Super Bowl. Like, he's a wide receiver. I mean, he wants to win. I'm not like calling him out and saying he doesn't want to win Super Bowls. He obviously does. But he wanted to get paid. He wanted one more big deal because that was going to be his last big deal before he hits 30 years old. And he's the best wide receiver in the league. So he wants to be paid like that. I have no problem. Everybody wanted that kind of money. Tyreek Hill wanted that money. The Chiefs said absolutely not, and they traded him away, right? A.J. Brown wanted that money, and Tennessee traded him away to the Eagles. And like Mahomes didn't bitch about it. Instead, he went out and won a Super Bowl with Juju Smith-Schuster and MVS. Ryan Tannehill, maybe he bitched about it. Nobody paid attention. Nobody cared. But nobody wanted to pay wide receivers that kind of money, like you said last year. I would have paid Davante, though, because he is the best receiver in the league. But I get the thinking. He's 30 years old. What was Jordy? 32, 33, and he really lost the step. We figured it out. We realized it that year. My excuse, though, is it was Brett Hundley throwing him the football, but he clearly had lost the step.
But Davante has not lost anything.
No, absolutely not. And they pissed off Davante. They did it the season before. So I get Rodgers being upset about that. But at the end of the day, man, they all should have had better communication and figured something out.
Okay,
Rodgers moved a lot of money for 1 year to win, 7 games.
Right. Let's move on. Because I don't like how they negotiated that deal and what the starting point was. So that was bad on them. I'll tell you the next thing that was horrible as a manager goes. Goody, if you didn't want Aaron, then you should have just told him, like he's been saying this whole time, dude, we're moving on. We're done. Like, when the season ended, it should have just been, we're going to move on. Give me a list of your teams you'd consider going to. I'm not telling you that we're going to trade you somebody outside of your list. Give me 5 teams. And whoever gives me I talked about this on Curtin Long. Give me one of your 5. Give me 5 teams that you like. Not 1, 5 or 3, right? And now wherever they get the best deal, you're going to go. And that's how we're going to do it. But instead, we got to play games. Oh, we want you. Oh, we want you to retire as a Packer. Oh, blah, blah, blah. Okay, fine. So now they're going back and forth having this conversation. So he says, according to Rodgers, hey, I'm going to come out west and drive out there. Got some stuff going on. Let's hook up. Aaron, according to Aaron now, we don't have Goody's side. Yeah, sounds good. Love to. I got some stuff going on with, talk to you and Matt about, blah, 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 blah. Okay, fine. This is where the failure in management comes. He never set a date. He never gave a date. He never gave a time. He didn't give nothing. And then all of a sudden he pops up and goes, hey, dude, I'm here. Want meet? Now, that's a failure on his part. Now I'm going to rip Rodgers. This is a failure on the employee part of it. You and I both have pretty much the same boss, right? And have had the same boss for a while. Could you imagine if our boss texted us something in the morning and you didn't text him back or respond to him back about your potential future, whatever, until the next day? And do you imagine how mad he would be? Oh my God.
I can't imagine having that kind of anxiety.
No.
That's what I love about Rodgers. He literally just said, F
This dude goes, the hell with him. I'll get back to him tomorrow when I get around to it.
Yeah,
and then Goody's gone. And then Rodgers is like, I don't understand. Okay, yes, he was wrong for not setting a date and time, and you were dead wrong for not getting back to him kind of immediately whenever you saw it. I'm not saying within 2 minutes, but within the next couple of hours when you saw your phone, and don't tell me you're not by your phone, within the next couple hours of, hey, dude, I got it. What time do you want to meet for lunch? Or whatever. Like something, anything. But you blew him off to show you're powerful. I'm Aaron Rodgers, and you can wait for me to call you back. And guess what? Goody said, the hell with you. I'm out of here. I ain't waiting for you. And he left. Back to what you said. 2 super egos not wanting to give up.
Really quick. So I think here's how it all went down, right? Rodgers he's not been the same. He's been pissed off since the Jordan Love pick. You could have given him any amount of money. Like, none of that was going to matter. You would damage the relationship. Then you damage the relationship with Devontae. Devontae leaves when Rodgers is already committed to coming back. And you bring in, the corpse of Sammy Watkins, who he did want, he says. A couple rookies Rodgers never trusts. Granted, Cobb and Lazard, who he takes with him to New York. But he didn't have his best weapons. He didn't have his go-to guy, Devontae Adams, who he was targeting every single week 14 to 15 times. And so that pisses him off. The Jordy stuff, all the stuff in the past pisses him off. And then I think the relationship with LaFleur, I mean, sure, they're giving each other fist bumps and hugging. I feel like that relationship was damaged when the NFC title game against Tampa Bay, when he sent Mason Crosby on that field. I think Rodgers lost a little bit of trust in Matt LaFleur. I don't think the relationship's been the same. I think they still like each other, but I just don't think that – I think it was just time, where – Rodgers wanted to leave, but he didn't want to be the bad guy because he loves the fans. He does love Green Bay. He loves, Earl in the cafeteria and everybody else he can name you. He just doesn't like Brian Gutekunst. So he was ready to go, but like Russell Wilson in Seattle, didn't want to be the bad guy because of his image. So, instead, he went into his cave. He didn't answer his phone, and he's going to make it look like, hey, they didn't want me. They drafted Jordan. It was their time. They were ready to move on to Jordan. They pretty much ghosted me. And then we find out that's BS. And so that's what I'm saying, man. It's like a bad marriage where like the mom doesn't want to be the bad person. The dad doesn't want to be the bad person. So I think there's a lot of truth to all of this. But I mean, Rodgers is probably to blame. Like he didn't want to be there anymore. He knew where he wanted to be. He wanted to be a Jet. There's a reason why Nathaniel Hackett got that job. Did you watch Denver last season, those 9-10 games he was there? Awful. He would never, if he wasn't Aaron Rodgers' gopher, if he wasn't like the Jack Haley to Dennis Rodman, you know what I mean? Like he does not have a gig because he can't call plays. The only reason he has that gig is because Rodgers is now in New York and he's going to be calling his own plays. We already see it. Look at that training camp, or the OTAs, man. Rodgers is running the whole show.
Sure is. Yep, absolutely. And he's essentially coaching
everybody. Wanted to do that in Green Bay.
Yes.
I mean, you wanted the general manager fired, man. Me or him. Like Mark Murphy's like, piss off, dude. You're Aaron Rodgers, but you got like 2-3 more years left in you. Goot's probably going to be running this team for 20 more years.
Let's rewind a second.
Yeah.
Do you think, because this was a big talking point after they drafted Jordan Love, and now revisionist history a little bit. Do you think if the Packers would have called Rodgers 2-3 picks before and said, hey, man, we're going to try and move up here.
No.
We really like this kid, Jordan Love. And, you're not getting any younger, obviously, but we're going to go draft this young quarterback. He's going to be kind of your backup, your backup kind of going forward here. We're kind of mold to get him ready here, but we're just giving you a heads up that we're going to go take this guy. So he doesn't find out from his agent. He doesn't find out from watching TV. He doesn't find out from social media, nothing else. They call him a couple of picks ahead of time to tell him that, look, we're thinking about moving up to maybe go get this kid. We really like him. And it's, no different than when you got drafted by the Packers with Favre, whatever the case may be, and we're going to do this. Do you think that changes the relationship between Goody and Aaron Rodgers at all, had they given him a heads up of more than like 30 seconds or whatever it ended up being before they made that pick of Jordan Love? Or do you think he hates Goody regardless, just for the simple fact of him even considering drafting a quarterback at that point in time? Because again, remember, they're coming off a conference title game.
Yeah, man, I think because he's like named T. Higgins. Like he's like, yeah, I know. Like he would still.
It wouldn't have mattered.
It wouldn't have mattered, man, because you're still drafting his replacement. He thinks he's in his prime, and he's won two. I mean, he's right. He won 2 MVPs after that. So it wasn't time to draft a quarterback. I still hate that pick. I would have drafted T. Higgins. No, the relationship's still damaged. Like, I don't think there's anything Goot could have done. I think it was over after Jordy. I mean, I think that was it, man, to be honest with you. Although Rodgers did like Jimmy Graham, they still hang out off the field. But like, yes. That's my problem with it. That'll always be my problem. Okay, yeah. Okay, Jordy was washed up. It was time for Jordy to go. But you don't bring in washed up Jimmy Graham 3 years past his prime. People are like, he caught 10 touchdowns with Seattle. Yeah, they're like, I don't know. He caught 5 Packers in 2 years. But I think that's what damaged it all, man, is, the Clay Matthews stuff, the Jordy stuff, and then the Jordan Love thing, I think, was the cherry on top. But no, if they called him, I don't think it would have mattered. Do you?
No, I don't think so either. But there was a lot of talk that they should have given him more of a heads up. And I agreed with that. But now, like I said, going back revisionist history and saying, would that relationship have been any different had they given him more of a heads up of what they were thinking and communicating more with Aaron Rodgers? Would it have changed the relationship? And I don't think the answer is yes, because Goody was going to manage the way Goody manages. Now, if something changes, right? If all of a sudden, now that Aaron Rodgers is gone, that Brian Gutekunst now is more visible, and he's seen joking around and having talks with Jordan Love and talking to his young wide receivers, and he becomes a different guy, that'll be good. I guess you could say he learned his lesson, or it could be bad in saying he just didn't like 12 and didn't want to deal with him. And that's kind of why he stayed out of the way, because he knew the future drama was coming at the end of the day between Goody and him. Because remember, there was all this drama between Ted and Brett, but Ted never spoke publicly about anything. Never. He never had Mark Murphy, going to basketball games and talking about stuff. He never had any of that. He was the only guy that would talk, and he didn't talk. Brett's doing Fox News and doing all this other stuff, and Ted's just sitting as always like, I don't care what he says. I'm going to do what I want to do, and I'm not talking to the media, and I'm not doing any of this stuff. Let him talk himself into a hole. Who cares?
Also, though, like, social media wasn't around, so people weren't, like, so obsessed with this kind of stuff. I will say, though, I was correct about the Packers beat, though. You have to admit.
About what?
Oh, man, they're going to miss Aaron Rodgers. I mean...
Well, this was a story that hadn't been done yet, so I'm all about this. This is great. But the Aaron Rodgers Jets stuff,
going anywhere. Yeah,
the Jets writers are going to have a field day, and I still think Rodgers may very well crumble under all this. I don't know how he's going to handle it. I really don't. If they lose and he's getting lambasted, I wouldn't be surprised if he starts tossing guys under the bus of why it's not working to get himself out from underneath it. They better win, because if they don't, I don't think he's going to handle it very well. I really don't.
I don't think the Rodgers stories or any of this is going away though anytime soon, because I already know how this plays out. I mean, we saw it with like Jermichael Finley and Greg Jennings. There's going to be there's going to be like a Kentrell Bryce that's going to write a book or come out and talk about all the drama
probably
behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, I'm just so over it though. I mean, yeah, it's good for content. And I do want to know what was going on behind closed, but I have a pretty good idea. Like, it was two guys with huge egos that didn't get along. They kept often Rodgers' best friends and guys that are really talented. Like, let's be honest, like the Packers have kind of been preparing for a rebuild since the Jordan Love pick. Look at that draft. It was Josiah.
Think about it. Who really?
AJ Dillon.
But Ryan, who burned him? Jordy didn't burn him after he left. Matthews didn't burn him after they left. I mean, Micah Hyde played better than he did here. Fine, I'll give you that. Casey Hayward had a nice little run of a couple of years. Okay. But from offensive players' standpoint, who left and went off and you're like, oh, damn. Devontae sure.
Awesome this year.
Devontae was still awesome, and now he's got Jimmy G or Tom Brady as his quarterback coming up. Congratulations.
MVS won a Super Bowl.
Yeah, but he wasn't. I mean, I like MVS, but he
I would have taken MVS on this year over Sammy Watkins.
Sure. Yeah. I would take MVS over Sammy Watkins. Yeah, I agree with you there. Here's Ryan Horvat, BetMGM tonight. Catch him weeknights while the games are going on. You can tune in him, Trista Crick, and, of course, Nick Ashu on BetMGM tonight, part of the BetQL network. Follow Ryan on Twitter at Ryan Horvat. And follow me at Sparky Radio, 1250 AMTheFan.com. Enjoy the rest of your day. And again, everybody can say they're over it and they're done with it. People are going to be talking about Aaron Rodgers for the foreseeable future. And when the season starts, people are going to be watching to see what Rodgers' numbers look like. And when Rodgers fails, people are going to be celebrating. Packer fans will be celebrating. And when Rodgers does well, people that love Rodgers, like Horvat, will be celebrating that he did well. And then the comparisons of Rodgers and Love this first season is going to be up the yin-yang as well, unfairly to Jordan Love. But that's how this whole thing is going to play out. It's too bad, but I have a feeling that's exactly how it's going to go. Enjoy the rest of your day. Toodles.